I want to welcome everyone to the hearing before the Subcommittee on National Security, the Border, and Foreign Affairs. Today's hearing is an examination of concerns of waste, fraud, and abuse and mismanagement of America's foreign aid, something that people back home love to hear about. I'd like to take a moment to thank our witnesses for being here today. It's my hope we can have a productive dialogue on the mechanisms needed to oversee how American taxpayer dollars are being spent on foreign aid. The World Bank, even the World Bank, estimates that 20% of foreign aid is lost to corruption each year, and that 30% of foreign aid fails to reach its intended target. The committee has a long history of conducting oversight on how few guardrails are in place when it comes to vetting contractors and grantees, leaving foreign assistance vulnerable to exploitation and undermining U.S. strategic goals. Today, we'll examine whether, and if so, how the U.S. government ensures that taxpayer-funded foreign aid achieves its objectives while safeguarding those dollars from being diverted to unintended or unlawful purposes. We'll examine how USAID and Department of State monitor and evaluate their programs to make sure they're meeting their intended goals. Recently, the USAID Inspector General has cautioned that foreign aid is going to Gaza and the West Bank, or foreign aid going to Gaza and the West Bank, is at extremely high risk of waste, fraud, and abuse. In 2022 and 2023, the United States donated over $700 million to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, an organization created and intended to provide humanitarian relief for the Palestinians. What did we find out? We now know the Hamas compound was located under UNRWA, an UNRWA building in Gaza City. Further evidence surfaced that some UNRWA employees participated in the devastating October 7th Hamas attack against Israel on Israeli soil. Unfortunately, the Biden administration has been sending taxpayer dollars to UNRWA since 2021, despite concerns that funds were being diverted to support terrorist activities. That's why the previous administration had held funds from UNRWA. The Biden administration unwisely reversed this decision, and taxpayer dollars were released to UNRWA without adequate guardrails to ensure the funds went for humanitarian relief rather than Hamas terrorists, and were only paused again after reports about UNRWA's support for terrorist activities surfaced a few weeks ago. That's why I led a request with Committee Chairman Comer and other Republican members of this committee to Secretary Blinken requesting documents and information about the Biden administration's 2021 decision to restore funding to UNRWA. Understand this decision will hopefully help us better understand if, and if so, how the administration tracks foreign assistance in other places around the world. The committee's oversight of foreign assistance is critically important, not only to ensure taxpayer dollars are being well spent, but also to know whether the federal government is providing foreign assistance from falling into the hands of terrorists or other malicious actors. A recent poll by the Associated Press found that 4 in 10 U.S. adults said foreign policy should be a top priority for the U.S. government. That's twice as many who mentioned the topic on the same survey conducted in 2022. This poll shows that increased anxiety of the American public feels when it comes on how the U.S. conducts itself on the world stage. Unfortunately, this administration made another reckless decision. During his recent State of the Union speech, President Biden announced plans for the U.S. military to build a temporary port to deliver more humanitarian assistance to Gaza. The president decided to maroon approximately 1,000 American uniformed men and women off the coast of Gaza to build, using taxpayers' dollars again, a supposed humanitarian aid port without providing assurances that Hamas will not attack our troops or those receiving the aid, or that Hamas will not divert that aid for its own evil purposes. Foreign aid to Gaza is not the only area of foreign assistance that requires scrutiny here today. The U.S. heavily relies on direct budget assistance to foreign governments. It's vital that Congress and the administration establish robust oversight mechanisms to prevent corruption and diversion of these funds. It always kind of amazes me. These countries always say they need funds, but they seem to disappear. Any assistance to Ukraine must also be conditioned on the principle that they will allow full transparency, commit to tracking weapons and equipment, and open their books to the U.S. government. Additionally, most of the money going to the Ukraine flows to the World Bank or other public international organizations. We owe it to the American people to demand greater accountability and transparency from multilateral organizations to ensure their operations align with our national interests and values. Lastly, we cannot ignore the allegations of political abuse surrounding the Biden administration's use of foreign aid. The politicization of aid distribution, including the imposition of conditions based on ideological agendas, including DEI goals and left-wing climate policies, threatens to undermine the credibility and effectiveness of our foreign assistance. Oversight of foreign assistance is not merely a matter of fiscal responsibility, but a reflection of strategic goals. Today's hearing represents an opportunity to identify shortcomings, propose reforms, and ensure that USAID serves as a force of good in the world.